Hello, everyone. Welcome to Black Women in Health COVID-19 Vaccine Myths versus Fact event. I hope everyone is ready to have a relaxing evening and learn from us today and share your thoughts as well as we go. We're just going to wait. We have a lot of people already on board, so I think we'll just kick off now so that we can keep to time today. So as we all know, this global pandemic has had a devastating consequences for every one of us all around the globe. And not only in terms of the fact that we've lost loved ones, we've lost colleagues, we've lost friends, but significantly, there's also been economic devastation as well. And not only the fact that, people can't go to work freely, people can't lead normal lives or enjoy the company of friends and do the things they normally will do. But the good news is that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And now there are vaccines out there that can help us fight this war with COVID-19. But there's been a lot of hesitation. There's been a lot of mixed reactions to the vaccine. It may not feel like there's a lot of difference yet, but the first vaccines that have been given out marks a turning point in the pandemic. Sorry about that. Day by day, the number of protected people will continue to climb up, and COVID-19 will slowly but surely start to find it more difficult to spread. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and this light will shine brighter. And that prospect of us returning to our normal lives, or even close to it, is something that looks really good at this time. But we are still in a dark place right now because there's a lot of hesitation and reluctance when it comes to the vaccine. And it's understandable. The truth is that Black and ethnic minority communities have been hit very hard by the COVID-19. And yet we have historical reasons to mistrust the health system. We have historical reasons to mistrust the vaccines, and it's understandable. It's okay to be concerned. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to have questions. It's okay to want to know more. But obviously, we need to look at what are the benefits of the COVID-19 vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccine has already started being rolled out all across the country. A lot of people are excited about the prospect of this first step to managing the spread of coronavirus. But there's also a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of myths and conspiracy theories surrounding the vaccine and its development. And it's so important that for us to make the right decisions when it comes to having the vaccine, we're able to separate the myths from the facts. We're able to separate, conspiracy theories from science and be able to make the right decision. The purpose of today's webinar is to present a broad view of the COVID-19 vaccine. No judgments, just pure scientific evidence of how the vaccines work, the side effects, and to debunk the myths floating around, as well as to shed some light on top asked questions surrounding the vaccines. And at the end of the day, we are hoping that we'll be able to, change some mindsets and build some confidence with us receiving the vaccine. We have a very distinguished panel today that will help us achieve our aim. And our aim for today is fourfold. Number one, to acknowledge the problems, acknowledge the reasons for the hesitation, acknowledge the reasons behind the mistrust towards the vaccine. Number two is to address those problems, address those hesitations, address those reasons, and answer the questions that you might have for us today. And finally, the last one is for you to act on any information you get today to empower yourself towards making the right decision when you are invited for the vaccine. So there's some housekeeping rules already in the session down below where the chat is. So please look at the chat box for the housekeeping rules. And we're going to now kick off by inviting our first speaker. Her name is Sam Lungu. Sorry, just a minute. So our first speaker is Sam Lungu. She's a senior transformational lead at the NHS England and NHS Improvement, and she's currently supporting the equality and inclusion agenda. She is currently deployed to support the workforce vaccination program and leads engagement across the 7 NHS regions. She's a nurse by background with 22 years of frontline experience as a registered mental health nurse, and she's the first community matron for dementia in the country. Sam is a leader who has supported board members and the workforce to achieve their primary goals. So Sam, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel humbled to have been invited to this very important event. And I'd like to start by paying tribute to all the key workers who work in healthcare, social care, supermarkets, education, and transport, because without these services, a lot of us and a lot of people who are on the front line would not be able to support the delivery of the COVID vaccination and meeting our activities of daily living. I would also like to send my condolences to all those people who have lost colleagues, family members, neighbors, and loved ones during the pandemic, because this is some of the things we face day in, day out during, our day-to-day living. As part of the response to COVID-19, NHS England and Improvement is leading the delivery of the COVID-19 vaccination program. And I'm working in the workforce vaccination delivery unit that is led by Dr. Naeem Ahmed, who's a practicing consultant radiologist at Chelsea Westminster. And I work with Marcus Riddle, who's the head of policy and evidence for the equality and inclusion function. And I'm leading on the engagement in improving staff uptake in the vaccination across the 7 regions. And what the key concerns have been, or the emerging concerns have been around the low uptake and hesitancy, are things which are already existing in our communities, and these are real concerns for us as an organization within NHS England and Improvement, but as for me, as a Black woman, a mom, wife, daughter, sister. And during our engagement, we have seen growing evidence that people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and young women especially, are more likely to be hesitant in taking up the vaccine. And we know that there's been different information being shared in social media, and often those questions are asked by our own colleagues, families, and loved ones. And as part of that deployment of setting up the 1,500 vaccination centers across the country within hospital hubs, walking centers, GP practices, community centers, and places of worship or sports centers, we as a unit, we know that we are actually part of these communities. And what is required is to actually proactively engage with different groups and communities to actually invite a dialogue, increase awareness, and understanding some of the challenges, barriers, and hesitance, which are quite prehistoric. And the engagement we have done so far has been with faith, spiritual and clinical leaders, and estates and facilities, and other different professional groups. This has been a very critical piece of work, because what we have been able to do is actually listen and respond compassionately to people's concerns, and actually have some of those open discussions of acknowledging some of the things which could be contributing to the low uptake, like, for example, for Black people, BAME people, discrimination in the workplace, the historic evidence around vaccines, which has happened for so many years. And what we intend to do within NHS England and Improvement is actually ensure that we are being transparent, so providing clear messaging and creating that feedback loop, which enables people to make informed decision about the need for them to take the vaccination so that they can protect themselves and their loved ones. And we intend to do this through collaboration, building partnerships, and ensuring people have got the safe spaces for all diverse voices to be heard. And something which we have done in the last 4 weeks has been just to get to the different communities. We have co-produced messages with clinicians, because these clinicians belong to a community, even though they are workforce for the NHS, where these clinicians have recorded themselves in their own native language about their experience of receiving the vaccination. And some have also made recordings of how initially they were hesitant and not wanting to take the vaccination, but over time they've come to appreciate and have made the decision to have the vaccination because they really want to protect their loved ones, and they really want to meet up with their family and go back to how things were, like you said earlier on in the opening. So people have said that they want to see people who look like them having these discussions, sharing the information, and the vaccine being accessible in the hearts of the communities where people live. So hence the reason why the vaccination centers have been deployed in the hearts of the communities. So we come to you as a Black woman group in healthcare and leaders in your own right, wanting your support, using your platforms, your influence, and your reach to audiences we may not ordinarily not be able to reach because of the mistrust and information which people might have against, or could have against the NHS or the government. And what we would like is to get your views on what you feel we need to do to strengthen how we can work together to protect the population, and also support where we can help connect the dots and ensure no communities are disadvantaged or left behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for that. We'll be taking questions at the end. So if you have any questions, please use the chat box, and our moderators will be looking at the chat for all the questions shared. I'm going to introduce our next speaker now, so that we just keep things rolling. Okay. Sorry about that. So our next speaker is Felicia Kwaku, OBE. She's an Associate Director of Nursing at King's College Hospital NHS Trust. Felicia has over 30 years of nursing experience, specialized in general intensive care and cardiac nursing. She trained at the University College London Hospitals. She's currently the interim chair of Chief Nursing Officer for England BME Strategic Advisory Group. Ms. Kwaku received an OBE last year for her services to nursing. She's going to be talking on experiences of the pandemic on the front line. Thank you, Felicia.
Thank you, Dr. Obon. I'm just going to load up my presentation, and if you let me know whether you can see it.
Okay.
Can you see that, Dr. Omon?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, then I'm probably going to not put it on slideshow because I'm going to skip some slides since I've got a very short amount of time. So welcome everybody to this afternoon session hosted by the Black Women in Health. I'm going to talk to you really about experience of being on the front line. So as Dr. Omon has said, my name is Felicia Kwaku. I have two roles, one within the hospital and one as the chair of the Chief Nursing Officers BME Black Minority Ethnic Nurses Group. And I've been on the front line in wave 1 and in wave 2. And the wave one really started around February, March of last year, 2020. And if you look at this picture, this shows at the time the amount of staff that died from COVID at the beginning of last year, around February, March. And this gentleman here on the second row, the black man with glasses, is my colleague, Dr. Alpha Sadhu, fantastic physician, care of the elderly physician who retired and came back to the NHS to help out during the pandemic. And if you look at this picture, I think this is on one of the newspapers, you will see that barring a few people, most of the people that died at that time were Black, Asian, or of Black and Asian origin. So we started to become very, very worried around February, March. And there were two seminal pieces of information. There were two reports, one from the Office of National Statistics and one from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. And they picked up and detected and measured the who was dying and the ethnicity of people who were dying. And what they showed was that if you were a black person, black male, you were 4.2 times likely to die from COVID. And if you were a black female, you were 4.3. If you were Asian, and there were distinct differences within the Asian communities, you were roughly around 2.9 times likely to die. So we had some very stark statistics very earlier on of last year. And I say this is really important because when you look at the National Health Service and the wider landscape, you will see that people from Black and Asian and minority backgrounds, we comprise quite a significant amount of the NHS, the healthcare workforce. If you look at doctors, the dark blue line is the ethnicity, and doctors form or comprise nearly over 40% of the medical workforce within the United Kingdom, and nurses 20% of the workforce in the United Kingdom. So we have we contribute quite a significant number to the workforce. And so why is this important? It's important because although we are significant within the workforce, we're not the majority, yet we contracted and we died in disproportionate levels during wave one, and in some cases wave two as well. So I'm part of a death in service group, and we were looking at the stats. And what came very clear, so this was data taken in June, we looked at 216 NHS staff deaths. And just to say, we think now that it's probably 800 nurses and doctors and other healthcare professionals that have died since then. There are still some issues around how we count the data. And outside of the NHS, I'm not sure how the data is being counted, but we looked at 216 staff that had died at the time. And out of those 216 deaths, nearly 200 of them were in an inpatient setting, so in the acute care setting in a hospital, and 17 had died in the community. And then when we further broke that down and you looked at who was dying, the makeup of people of dying, nearly 62% of all the healthcare workers at that time were from a Black and minority ethnic background. And we became very, very worried. And so in view of that, in my other role, we started to hear from nurses who were very concerned about that they were dying. They told us they were worried. And if you look at this top graph, you will see that when you look at where nurses are from Black and Asian and ethnic minorities, they are clumped here in band 5. We would call band 5, for those not in the healthcare setting, a junior nurse. And you will see that as you go up the bands, so the higher the number, the higher the band, the higher the pay, the higher the level, you will see that the representation of nurses from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds goes down. So we're clumped here. And what happens is that junior nurses are often on the front line. As you go down the line, you go into managerial positions. So here is the front line, either in a care home, either in another healthcare provider, and within the NHS. And you become vulnerable at this level because if you're on the ward where many of the patients are, that's where the viral load is at its highest. And so we were starting to see a pattern. And this is what the staff told us. These are Black, Asian, and minority nurses and midwives. They told us that if you're an agency nurse, you didn't have proper PPE. The PPE was actually hidden from you when you went onto the wards for some of them, and they didn't have any, and they were asked to go onto the wards and in other places without the proper personal protective equipment, and I mean masks, gloves, aprons, etc. There was lots of miscommunication. People weren't getting the right level of information. They felt that they were being disproportionately redeployed. So if they worked in an organization where they were the minority and the majority of the staff were white or from other backgrounds, they were being asked to go to the COVID areas in what they felt was very discriminatory. I've talked about communication, I've talked about the lack of information, and remember, it was quite a frightening time because the guidance kept on changing. You could wear blue masks, not wear blue masks, wear the specialized masks, not wear the specialized masks. There was lots of information changing, and it was causing a lot of instability within the workforce. Safeguarding was really, was what they also mentioned as well. And when we call about safeguarding, we mean when you're vulnerable, when you're bullied, when you're treated unfairly. Mental health was another big issue. There were a lot of nurses that were raising concerns about their mental health. They were traumatized, they were frightened, they didn't feel very well protected. Lots of them needed some counseling and psychological support. I've talked about the PPE issue, and a particular thing about the PPE issue was the lack of it. We recognize that there was insufficient amounts of PPE, and many people thought that that was the reason why the guidance kept on changing by the government, because there was a lack of PPE. And we also discovered at the time that people from ethnic backgrounds, they have different facial features, and actually the special mask that you are required to wear in COVID areas, it didn't fit them very well. And so we've actually had to redesign the masks. And so if your mask doesn't fit, you will be exposed to more viral load from the COVID. Risk assessments are really important. We have to assess the risk when you're going into an area full of COVID. And if the risk assessments aren't done, that it makes you vulnerable. And many staff hadn't had risk assessments done, and they didn't reflect your ethnicity. And many staff also told us that they couldn't get access to COVID testing. So because of all of this, we ran a series of 8 engagement sessions. We met and engaged with over 1,600 staff. We've met many staff since then, and we actually made some recommendations to the Chief Nursing Officer of the country, and I met with all the Chief Nursing Officers across the different regions of England. And we made a whole list of recommendations, and I won't go into all of them, but you can see them on the slide. And the forefront was you need to protect staff and keep them safe. And so what's it like being on the front line? These are my matrons you'll see on the picture here. These are my matrons, these are the staff, these are some more staff. So it was a time where there was lots of terror, people were frightened, but it was also a time where we had to really dig deep, and we really had to learn on the job different skills and new skills. We had to move outpatient staff into the wards. We had to, in this second wave, we've actually had to convert some outpatient departments into wards. We're working long hours. I think that one of the big things is that patients have died really quickly. I remember a week where we had 64 deaths in 1 week. So that should tell you how significant, that's unheard of in normal times. We had to open COVID wards, close COVID wards, back and forth. We had to work in a very command and control function, and the testing we had to really ramp up. And there are still lots of traumatized, as well as staff feeling really proud of themselves. There's still a lot of traumatized staff, and it's been very tough and it's been very rough. So this is some of my staff. This is how we look like when we're in a COVID ward, visors, masks, and everything else. And this is one of my matrons. I can't show you the video because of time, but this is matron Richard. He got COVID during the first wave. He ended up in the intensive care unit. We nearly lost him, but we thank God that he has recovered. And he's one of many staff who got COVID and who've now recovered, but he's one of many. So we are really thankful, but there are many that have died. So I'm just going to end here. to say that this second wave, the difference between the first and second wave is that in the first wave, we were still foraging and still trying to find out and discover the issues around the vaccine, around the COVID. They had started to put processes in place around developing a vaccine, and we were working with lots of unknowns with this new virus. In this second wave, what I've noticed is that the speed and the rate of spread is really virulent. It's much faster, much quicker, and that's because the virus is changing, and you will have heard of these variants, which means the virus is mutating constantly. The death rate is really high, very, very high compared to the first wave. The staff are really, really exhausted and tired. And I've said we didn't know how we were going to get through the second wave, but we have. If we have a third wave, I don't know how the NHS will survive that and the other healthcare provision. We've really tried to pull out of the bag a lot of provision for health and well-being, because we talk about waves of the pandemic, but actually there is post-traumatic stress waves coming along as well. And there is this thing I've put here about moral injury, and moral injury basically means that we have a lot of staff who felt that they couldn't give their best or were asked to do things that they weren't used to doing, and that's caused a degree of stress as well. So this picture in the middle is staff that have died, and I will tell you this week that 9 nurses have died this week, including one of my own. So I'm not here to tell you to take the vaccine or not take the vaccine. What I'm here with my colleagues is to make an informed decision based on facts and not mythology. Okay. For me, I had my hesitations, but having 9 nurses die has turned my mind in a different direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felicia. Thank you so much for that very touching talk. We're going to move to our next speaker now. Our next speaker is Dr. Abel Adegoke. Dr. Abel Adegoke is a senior executive partner at Hamilton Medical Center in Birkenhead, Wirral. He's also the honorary secretary for Wirral LMC. He's a GP and he's also a pastor. And he's going to be talking today about COVID-19 complications and giving us a Christian view as well to this virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to you for the opportunity to come onto this program. I thank the Black women in health, and I also want to thank everyone that has signed in to get this information. And I am on the front line. I have been since the beginning of the pandemic, but also I'm working at a very high level with the command and control. So I know so much about this pandemic and the effect that it has had. So I'm going to talk briefly on the complication. In fact, I wrote an article or like a booklet at the beginning during the first wave. And as we have heard, at that time, it was a strange and very much unknown problem to us. It's still, to a degree, we still don't have full understanding of everything about COVID-19 yet. However, we know so much now, and that has helped us to move on so much. So talking about the complications of COVID-19, apart from the common one that all of us have heard of, which is death, because that's a complication that many people, a good number of people have died. And that death is quite disproportionate amongst the BAME community, which is some of the information that we have had. But for those who survive COVID, it's still not, it's still a difficult problem for them, those who survive COVID. And I'm going to talk about the complications in terms of physical, mental, and emotional stroke, religious or spiritual effect of it. on us. So physically, the complication could be immediate or long-term. Some of the immediate complications lead to, unfortunately, premature death, like people having severe lung problem, which take away their breath and led to severe breathing difficulties, and some of them died from that. Some people have problem with their heart, leading to heart attack that is unexpected, and that caused death. Some develop heart failure and stuff like that with relation to their heart. There's problem about clot forming, and people throwing clots into their lungs and dying from that. So those are some of the immediate problem, complication from COVID. But let's turn our attention to the long-term complication, which is the real, and I'm talking of physical problem now. As a GP, I have seen quite a good number of patients who present with what we now term long COVID syndrome. And the long COVID syndrome include people having persistent dry cough. They're just coughing and coughing. And you need to have had persistent cough for 1 or 2 weeks before you will know how difficult it is to cope with something like that. Now, to be having it since March last year, you can see how miserable people's life can become from something like that. Some people have persistent generalized weakness. They just fatigue all the time. Again, we know about chronic fatigue syndrome. We know the terrible effect it has on the quality of people's life. And some people are grappling with that currently as a result of having COVID-19. There are other problems with the gastrointestinal system and stuff like that that people are coping with. There are all sorts of different rash, different type of skin diseases that has actually they have been identified as a result of COVID infection. So long COVID is a big issue, to the point that the government is now funding centers across the country where people with such problem are referred to and are seen by multidisciplinary team group. I will talk about the emotional effect of COVID. Emotionally, I mean, as a GP, part of one of the common problem I see regularly pre-COVID is mental health issue. But that has quadrupled. It's exponentially rising. People are frightened. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what your status or what your previous position had been. A lot more people are frightened. They have anxiety. They have depression. But also, there's one that is coming more and more now, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. People who either are seen as healthcare worker, people dying in the way they are dying. You listen to Felicia saying many people are dying more than you have ever experienced before. That is creating traumatic experience for people, which is creating that stress disorder in them. But people who have gone through COVID experience, I mean, I had appendicitis and that was removed in 2000. I was on the ward. After 24 hours, I was fed up of the ward. Even as a doctor who has always worked on the ward, I was fed up, but I was happy because my family was with me. Now you can imagine having a very frightening disease condition that you are not sure whether you are going to survive, and yet you don't have anybody come near you. The only people you see, they dress like somebody in the moon. It's a difficult experience. And you can now imagine having survived that, waking up in the night, remembering that experience. It's a tough thing. In terms of spiritually, some people spiritual understanding have been awakened, especially if they have some Christian or religious or faith background. It helps some people to connect better, but it has affected some people to actually abandon it. But in my own experience as somebody who like actually pastor, is that more and more people actually now are expressing their faith in God. They can see that humanly, there are situations that you find yourself that you have no control over. And that has helped people to connect. But it's a disease that came. I don't see any scriptural basis to say it is a disease that was sent by the devil. I don't see any scriptural basis for that. And I don't preach about such things. I believe that things can happen in the natural sense, like it has happened to us. But as Christians, we always look for the spiritual teaching and what we can learn from it to help us connect better with our God. And that is what I've seen. Now, having gone through all that, as a frontline person, as a person with my role, I work on organizing, supervising the distribution and vaccination. And on the Wirral where I live, we have vaccinated close to 115,000 people. I have supervised majority of that. I was one of the first group of people to take the vaccine. To let you know, I had my 2 doses before the rule came that you can't have 2 doses within 3 weeks. So I have had it, and I'm glad I did. I have no regret. I had no hesitation over it. During the initial lockdown, our main prayer was, God, please give us a solution. And my own personal belief is vaccine is a solution that God has given us. So I will recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adegoke. Thank you so much. That was really, really, really eye-opening and, very emotional as well. Thank you for that talk. Our next speaker is Dr. Raliat Onotade. Dr. Raliat Onotade is the Group Chief Pharmacist and Clinical Director for Medicines Optimization at Bat Health NHS Trust. Dr. Raliat has an integral role in the planning, mobilization, and running of 4 hospital vaccination hubs and the NHS COVID-19 Vaccine Centre at the Excel London. Dr. Raliat and her team led on ensuring the legal, safe, and appropriate handling, use, and administration of the vaccine. She was also instrumental in putting together the pharmaceutical services for the London Nightingale Hospital. So today, with no further ado, I'll invite Dr. Raliat Onotade to take the stage and talk about the vaccines, the ones that are available and how they work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Omon, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this really important event. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different vaccines that are available to us in the UK. As Dr. Omon said, at Barts Health, we currently have 5 vaccination centres. So we have our 4 hospital hubs and the large vaccination centre at Excel in London. And as a pharmacist and the chief pharmacist, then it's been my job to understand as much as possible about the vaccines, how to handle them, any issues with them, and how to make sure that we can vaccinate as many people as possible. We have had a lot of questions. Every day we have a lot of questions from different people about the vaccine. So I'm really pleased to be able to share some information about them with everybody on this call today. So I'm going to talk about the 3 vaccines which have been approved in the UK, but only 2 of them are actually available for our use at the moment. So, and I'll talk about them in order. So the first vaccine is the Pfizer Biontic vaccine, and it's mainly produced by a collaboration by a German company and Biontic and Pfizer. So Pfizer-BioNTech was the very first vaccine to be authorised in the UK, and it was authorised back in December. The Pfizer vaccine is the one which everybody has heard of, which is frozen. and it needs to be kept at at frozen temperatures until just before we want to start using it. And I'll talk in a few minutes, I'll talk about why it has to be frozen. The second vaccine is called Oxford Astrazeneca vaccine, and you may hear people calling it either the Oxford vaccine or the Astrazeneca vaccine. This vaccine was produced in the UK, a collaboration between Oxford University, or the University of Oxford, and the drug company Astrazeneca. This vaccine was approved in the UK just it's still last year, just before the new year. So it was the second vaccine which we now use. And then the third vaccine, which we do not have available for our use yet, is called Moderna, and that's an American vaccine. It is actually available in the US, and people are being vaccinated with it in the US, but we're not expecting to get any doses of that vaccine here in the UK until the spring. So currently, the two vaccines that we have are the Pfizer Biontic and the Astrazeneca vaccine. If you go for your vaccination at what we call the vaccination centres, which are the very large centres such as the XL or the vaccination centres which are being held in like football stadiums and conference centres, you're much more likely to get the AstraZeneca vaccine. But for the Pfizer vaccine, you will normally get from other places such as your GPs or your or community pharmacies, but it's not guaranteed. So you can actually get either of those vaccines depending on where you go and get vaccinated. Now, in terms of how they work and how efficacious they are, the two vaccines work largely the same way, but just with some very gentle differences. As a general rule, all vaccines work in the same way. What you want to do with the vaccine is when somebody takes the vaccine, then the vaccine needs to tell the body that it has got the infection whilst not really giving the person that infection, so that your body marshals its immune responses and starts to fight that infection that it thinks it has. That means that your body then becomes ready in case you actually do get the infection in real life, or you do get exposed to the virus in real life, and therefore you can fight it off. So for both the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine, what happens is that those vaccines, they carry a protein which is just like the Kovid, the COVID virus. It's a code which is just like the code on the vaccine, on the COVID rather. And so when it's injected into us, then it tells the body thinks that it actually is the virus. It is not the virus. It's just a code which tricks the body into thinking that it's the virus. And therefore your body starts to make the antibodies and to prepare its immune reaction to fight. And that's why when you take the vaccine, you might have some side effects such as pain, chills, headache, maybe a little bit of feeling a little bit feverish, because your body is developing that immune reaction ready to fight the virus, but you don't actually have the virus. And that means that if you do come in contact with the virus, those weapons available. So therefore therefore it's ready to fight the virus if you come in contact with it. And that's really how all vaccines work. The difference between the vaccines really is around what method the vaccines are used to enter the body. So sometimes they're injections. Obviously, for our COVID vaccines, they're injections. Sometimes they can be, oral, so in the mouth, and sometimes they can be nasal, for example. In our case, for the COVID vaccines, they're all injections. Now, what the other thing that lots of people ask about is how it is that we've been able to produce these vaccines so quickly, when normally it takes years and years and years in order to produce these vaccines. And I think that's a really good question, because yeah, for people who know how long these things take and how long it takes to develop drugs, then it's quite surprising that we've been able to get this get these vaccines really, really quickly. So what's happened was that the development of all these vaccines started round about January or so in 2020 was when the development of the vaccines, most of the vaccines started. And there are a few things which happened, which means that it was really quick to develop these vaccines. First of all, because we're in a global pandemic and a crisis, then there was a lot of collaboration between lots of different labs, all working together in order to develop these vaccines. So whereas you might just have, just a handful of people or a few researchers working on this, this was a global crisis. So there was hundreds of people working across the world in order to develop these vaccines, which meant that there was a lot more work done a lot more quickly. A lot of labs developing the vaccines, they stopped doing anything else but just working on the vaccines. And so again, they were able to just put all of their energy and attention towards the vaccines. Now, when it comes to the trials and the trials that were conducted in order to test it, because whenever you develop a new medicine, you have to do a lot of trials. What people did was that rather than running the trials one after the other, the way that the trials that you normally do clinical trials for medicines, you have phase 1, which is with a very small number of people, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 3 is your larger trial. What actually happened is that because they had a lot more people involved, and they needed to happen really quickly, rather than skipping the different phases of the trials, they actually ran trials together. So for example, they would run phase 1, phase 2 together. Phase 1 is you give it to very healthy people to see how safe it is. Phase 2, you give it to more people to check what dose, etc. So they ran phase 1, phase 2 together, for example. And then, for example, some companies, they ran phase 2, phase 3 together. And what that meant is that combination of lots of people working together, only concentrating on the vaccine, as well as running a lot of the trials together. So rather than skipping steps, they ran them concurrently rather than sequentially. That meant that you were able to develop the vaccines a lot quicker than you normally would. With the regulation now, so when you develop a new medicine or a vaccine, then the next thing to do is that it has to go for approval. And in the UK, we have our regulatory body, the MHRA. What would usually happen is that once all the trials are finished, then the company would give all their information to the regulatory body, and the regulatory body then has to look at all of that information once it's delivered to them. What they did this time, the MHRA did this time around, was that as the information was coming through from the trials, they did what they call a rolling review. So they were reviewing the data as it came through and as it came through and as it came through, which meant that it was when they got all of the data, then it was much quicker to finally say, yes, everything is fine, because they've been reviewing the information as it was coming along. So my final part in this segment really is going to just talk a little bit about the efficacy, and I can see there are some questions about in the chat about the efficacy. Now, the thing to remember with clinical trials is that there's the efficacy from clinical trials, which doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as in real life because of the conditions, the very strict conditions under which you will do clinical trials. So the Pfizer vaccine in clinical trials has been shown to be 95% efficacious. and the Astrazeneca, on average, 70% efficacious. But that doesn't mean that in real life there's a massive difference between all of them. Actually, because of differences in the way that people handle and do the clinical trials, as a general rule, as long as a vaccine, any vaccine, shows more than 50% efficacy in clinical trials, then it will be approved. So both of the vaccines are very, very efficacious, not only stopping people from getting the COVID. What's also been shown is that if you do have the vaccine and you do get COVID, then in all of the trials, nobody who'd had the vaccine had a serious episode of COVID, which means that actually it's also much less likely to be seriously ill, even if you do get it. So you're very unlikely to get it if you do get the vaccine. And if you do, you'll, excuse me, excuse me, you're much less likely to be seriously ill, and that's really important when you come to think about immunity, etc. For people taking the vaccine. Thank you very much, June, for your blessings. So I think so. I'm going to stop here and just sort of talking about the vaccine. But just to reiterate, we currently have the 2 vaccines available to us. There will be a third coming along in round about the springtime. And also from the clinical trials, they've all been shown to be very, very efficacious, not only in reducing the risk of people getting COVID, but very importantly, reducing the chances that if you do get COVID, that you will be seriously ill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ralia. That was really insightful and very well explained. Thank you so much. I'm going to call our next speaker now, who is Dr. Olukayode Adeko. He's a multiple award-winning GP in Merseyside with a special interest in medical leadership. He is the lead GP at Newton Medical Center and a GP community tutor and a honorary lecturer for University of Liverpool. Dr. Adeko is a fellow of the Royal College of General Practitioners and the Faculty of Medical Leadership. He's going to be talking to us today about why COVID vaccine is important and why we should take it. Thank you. Okay, you're mute. You're mute, please.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on now. We can see and hear you.
I will quickly talk about this, why I think vaccine is very important at this stage. I think the only way out of this pandemic now is for us to have the vaccination. I don't think there is any other way at the moment. I mean, we've not got any medication at the moment that can prevent development of COVID infection. We haven't got any medication that can effectively cure the infection. The only medications we've got at the moment are the medications that can reduce the severity of the condition while patients are in the hospital. We've got medications that can reduce the hospital stay. We've got medications that can reduce ICU stay. But even at that, we are still recording tens of thousands of patients dying every day worldwide with this condition. With the vaccine, I believe strongly that if we all agree and come together and we all have this vaccination as recommended, at some point, this condition is going to almost be eradicated in the near future. So I think the only way out is to have the vaccination. And with the vaccine, one, like I said before, the number of deaths should be coming down. The number of patients that are quite unwell should be coming down as well. And we should, hopefully in the near future, go back to normal life. What life used to be. I think we're all tired now of these circles of lockdowns, circles of restrictions. We've tried it first time, we've got the second wave now. We are praying we won't have the third wave. With the vaccine, we believe strongly that that won't happen, but we need to all cooperate and work together to achieve this aim. We are all missing so many things. I mean, social interaction is almost zero now. We can only do only few things. I've put a few things here to remind us of what we are already missing. I mean, from in our social lives, look at the number of jobs that are already lost because of the pandemics, the economic hardship, the recession, not just in one country, virtually all the countries of the world are experiencing this, apart from a few. Look at the shops, and the NHS, as mentioned before, we are overstretched. From primary care to secondary care, all our hospitals are overwhelmed. Other conditions that should be treated in the hospitals are being postponed, or we don't even know when they are going to happen because the hospital staff are busy looking after patients with COVID. With the vaccination, we believe strongly that this will be coming down. So again, our kids can't go to school anymore. They are doing online classes, which is not as the same as going to their classes like they will normally do it. With the vaccination again, we're expecting that they'll be able to return in due course. I mean, hopefully from March now, they'll be able to go back, but we still need to have the vaccination so that will prevent the infection from spreading. Again, if you look at it, I mean, we can't go to churches to have the physical interaction like we used to do. That goes with the mosque. The Juma services are not happening like they used to be, and the Owambes are gone. I mean, to any party or any social occasion to actually attend physically is all on Zoom. It's not the same. We are missing out because of this condition. But with the vaccination, I think some of these things will come back. We can't go on holidays again. We can't go to bars. We can't go to shops. Mask is now the order of the day. How long are we going to continue this? But with the vaccination, we believe at some point, all this will change and we'll go back to what it used to be pre-COVID. Again, and grandparents are there. They can't see their loved ones. They can't see their grandkids anymore. Everything is on Zoom. With vaccination, hopefully, this will happen in the very near future. So I believe vaccination is very, very important. We all know the reason why we need to get it. And hopefully, if you think about it very well, the risk and the benefit, I mean, it's been highlighted just now that the risk of the vaccination is very, very minimal. If you look at it, I've had my own vaccination as well. I've only had one dose, and I didn't have any major side effect at all. The first day I had a bit of pain in the arm, and that was it. Nothing serious. I've not taken anything to actually treat myself for it. So I believe the vaccination is good enough for everybody. The second thing I will quickly talk about is why have I taken the vaccine myself? For selfish reason, I've taken it to protect myself because I've seen people dying. I know of a number of patients that I've lost because of COVID. Unfortunately, we've lost some colleagues because of COVID. So it's very, very important. And we're in the front line. I see patients virtually every day, in hours, out of hours. I've got to protect myself. So I've had to take this selfish reason to take the vaccine. And I think you need to have that reason as well. You need to take the vaccine. It's that important that you take it. So I've taken it, and that's my card to confirm that I had the first dose. Again, I've got a family. I don't want to lose any member of my family. I don't want them to end up in the hospital, to be in either on the ward or in the ITU, like explained by other the panelists. Going to hospital is not a joke at all, especially going with COVID. Unfortunately, you won't even be allowed to be there with them. It's not like the previous time when you could stay with your loved one in the hospital. This is a different time now. So you don't want to be there. If they get the vaccine, if you are vaccinated, chances of you bringing the virus home and passing it on will be very, very minimal. So I've taken it to protect my family. Again, I've got colleagues at work. I want to make sure that they are protected as well as taking it for myself. I want to make sure my colleagues are not left out and they are protected. I've got patients. I've mentioned this. I'm a doctor. My duty is to make sure my patients are well protected. So I have to lead by example. I've taken my vaccine and I'm encouraging my patients to have the vaccine at the same time. And finally, we belong to the community. We are all human race. This virus is attacking man. It's attacking woman. It's attacking just human beings. So we need to protect ourselves. And if we all do our own parts, then the chances of this vaccine lingering will reduce. And at some point, we will go back to what it used to be. So that is why I've taken the vaccination. I will stop there for now because of our time and allow the next speaker to talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeoko. That was very, very, very good. And I really like the reasons you gave. And I believe that sometimes we need to be selfish for ourselves. So I think that was really an important slide that you shared. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Yeyenta Osazu. Yeyenta Ozuzu is a clinical pharmacist with frontline experience of working in a variety of sectors within the NHS. She is a member of the 2020-2021 cohort of Health Education England Public Health Fellows. Her work focuses on reducing health inequalities and preventing ill health, especially in undeserved population. Her current work focuses on promoting equality and reducing inequality in the COVID-19 vaccine uptake across Sheffield. She's currently in the final stages of her PhD studies at the University of Sheffield. Dr. Yeyenta Ozuzu will be talking about who is eligible to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Thank you, Yeyenta.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here, and thank you so much for coming. My condolences to those who've lost loved ones or who have lost family members and colleagues in this pandemic. So my brief is to answer the question of who can get the COVID-19 vaccine. So the government, the JCVI group, which is the Joint Committee for Vaccinations, have stated, they've laid out a priority list. Okay, and so the first is that the people who are residents of a care home for older adults and their carers are the first cohort of patients, of people to be vaccinated. The second, all those who are age 80 years and over and frontline health and social care workers. So you might be wondering, who are health and social care workers? So the health and social care workers, the frontline workers, are those who are working with people who are clinically vulnerable to COVID-19 under the government's definition. So there are a clear guidelines of who those people are. In that, actually, people who are receptionists, whether in the ward or in GP surgeries, you also classify as a health and social care worker. The third category of people are those who are age 75 years and over, and then those who are age 70 years and over and who are also clinically extremely vulnerable. And so these are the people who the government has targeted to be vaccinated before the 15th of February, which is actually in 2 days' time, which is Monday. Following that, and the thing is, the rate of cover kind of varies across the country, but the target is that these first 4 cohorts will be at least invited by the GP surgery or by the CCG to go and get the vaccination. Following this first cohort, then the 5th cohort will be those who are age 65 years and over. And number 6 priority list will be those who are age 16 to 64 years with underlying health conditions which put them at risk of disease or mortality. And the 7th is then those who are 60 years and over, then those who are 55 years and over, and then those who are 50 years and over. But I want to also specifically speak about those who are in cohort number 6, because now, hopefully by now, all those who are in the first 4 cohorts should have been invited, or at least got an invitation or had their vaccines already. But those who are in the cohort number 6, which is 16 to 64 years with underlying health conditions, might be those who are, what are those underlying health conditions? So your GP would normally identify you and then call you. So this would be more people who are younger than the old people who we have seen vaccinated, on the news and so on. And these diseases, like those who have organ diseases like kidneys, liver, lung diseases, chronic COPD, asthma, etc. Also, those people who suffer from immune diseases or immunocompromised will also fall under that category. Not forgetting also those who have learning disabilities or disabilities of some sort, which makes them clinically extremely vulnerable, would also fall under that category. If you're not sure, you can speak to your GP and find out whether you identify with that population. I would also want to add also that it's important that people who are carers, and that's people who are unpaid carers, try to assess where they stand with this. And the reason I say this is that people from BAME communities, or Black African people, or even Asian people as well, sometimes we don't necessarily see ourselves as carers or identify as carers. So it's really important that we reassess what our position is. Sometimes we have the misconception that if I'm identifying as a carer, it means that you know, I'm reporting my family member, I'm taking this as a job. But actually, there are support networks out there that people need to be aware of, because some caring responsibility is a really tough task. And a lot of people within the BAME community care for our relation, or mothers, fathers, children, but we don't identify with the local council. We don't come out to say, I'm a carer. We just think, no, I'm just looking after my relation. Okay, so it's really important, because that person you're caring for could be clinically extremely vulnerable. And if you have COVID, you then put them at risk. So it's really important that you go through the right means and register yourself as a carer properly. Now, who are the carers? People who the government would identify as carers are those who are receiving a carer's allowance. You might actually be a carer. You might have been a carer for many years, but you're not in receipt of any allowance because you've just not identified yourself with the relevant organization to notify yourself as a carer. So it's important that you reassess yourself. You might be looking after somebody with mental illness or long-term disabilities, but you've just been doing that as part of your role or your duty in the family. That's good, but it's important that you identify as a carer. Also, it's important that those who are living with disabilities or those who are, as I've said, those who are caring for people living with disabilities might also fall under that category 6. And the reason I say this is that very soon, in the next, hopefully few weeks, you know, if you identify as a carer and those also living with disabilities within that cohort will be invited. So another way to help yourself to assess your eligibility for a carer's allowance or to assess yourself as a carer would be to contact Carers UK. So if you put on Google Carers UK, you would be able to get more information on there. So I think that's, you know, that's for now, that is the priority list by the UK government. And there comes about a lot of questions about, well, some people think they should be eligible for the vaccine and they're not eligible, they're not being invited. I would say, for example, agency workers, agency nurses or locums, or people who are not permanent staff, but you work within healthcare, please do speak up. Ask for the vaccine, even if you have not been invited, request for it because it's your right, it's free. And we've already heard all the reasons why we need to have the vaccine. We're not here today to make you have the vaccine, but we're here to give you the facts about it. We're here to give you honest opinion and the truth out there. And then it's for you to make up your mind about whether you want to have it or not. But you know, it's just important that you make an informed decision as to whether you're going to have the vaccine or not. I have had my vaccine, and like many other people at the very beginning, even as a pharmacist, I had, you know, a little misconceptions and misgivings, you know, as a pharmacist, knowing that the clinical trials take a long time. I mean, and for the vaccine to have been produced so quickly, you know, I mean, it's a record, it's a world record. But I have read all the details, I have read trials, I've read papers, and I've come to be confident in it. And we just don't have that luxury of time to wait and see how it affects other people before we take the vaccine. We can see the numbers. The numbers in the second wave is actually a lot higher than that in the first wave. And the second wave shows that a lot more younger people are actually dying from this disease. So it's important that we take this thing seriously, because, you know, COVID is real, number one. Number two, it's here to stay. And the only way that, as the previous speaker has said, the only way to help to get rid of it is to ensure that we play our part. Taking the vaccine is one of it. Also maintaining the social distance and the maintaining social distance, keeping hands clean, covering our faces and on our mouths, and following all the rules that we've been asked to follow. And one thing I must say is that even when you've had your first vaccine, we're not out of the woods yet. So it's very important to remember that, because there is such a thing as resistance, and we can already see how the viruses are changing and they're mutating. Viruses are very clever. They don't want to go extinct. They want to remain, they want to survive. And in that bid to survive, they constantly change, okay? And they would change when certain populations are not taking the vaccine, or people are moving. I mean, they have different ways of chopping and changing one slight thing just to remain relevant and just to remain alive. So it's our duty to make sure that we do our bit in keeping ourselves protected. But as I said, even though you've got the first vaccine like myself, it's still important that we don't now just go and start hugging people, go and start visiting our friends and relations. You know, we need to wait and have the second dose when we are invited, and follow the government's guidelines and all the very clever people and clever scientists who then tell us and release us stepwise and you know, release us in the way that we can begin to socially interact in acceptable ways. So please, even if after this webinar, this session, you decide that you're now going to take the vaccine, remember that it's only the first dose of the vaccine. It's not giving us complete protection. And also there is no evidence that it would totally reduce our transmission to other people. So it's important that still you maintain your social distance, you still cover your face, wear your masks, and wash your hands regularly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yayanta. That was really, really thorough. Thank you so much. I'm sure people got a lot from what you said. I'm just going to rush because we're running out of time to call our next speaker, Imam Mohammed Ahmed Khorshed. He is the Imam of Dural Aman Mosque in Manchester. He's going to be talking about COVID-19 from the religious view as a Muslim. Thank you, Imam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me on this platform. And I think it's extremely crucial that this is being discussed. And this is a problem in certain communities whereby there are some myths attached to the vaccination. From a Islamic point of view, or from a point of view of religion, this has always been around. Pandemics have come and gone, and people have been affected by such pandemics. The reality of the world that we live in this day and age, we call it a global village, which it is. It's easy to communicate, it's easy to travel. But at the same time, the spread of social media, where it has many, many benefits. One recent study said that fake news spreads 6 times faster than the actual news.
Sure.
And this couldn't have been more true for COVID-19. I mean, if you remember when this first began, people were giving all forms of herbal remedies and different remedies to cure this this illness, really. And we still saw that people were dying, they were passing away. And in the first wave, it was people of African origin and Black communities which were affected more than the rest of the country. In the recent wave, a recent study from the BBC News pointed out that people from Pakistani communities and Bangladeshi communities were affected more than others. I think 5 times more than others. So clearly, there's a big underlying problem there. Now, in terms of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he mentioned that when a pandemic occurs, then people residing in that city should not exit the city, they should not leave the city. And people living outside of that city should not enter that city. So exactly as the isolation rules are, or the rules of the government are, these rules were established 1500 years ago by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, one key understanding between people of all religions is to respect and to love your neighbor. Christianity, Islam, any religion for that matter. It says to love for your neighbor what you love for yourself. And neighbor doesn't automatically mean the neighbor next door. It means everyone you meet. Anyone who passes by you, he becomes your neighbor or she becomes your neighbor. So protecting that neighbor is something which all religions teach, right? So that will be extremely selfish of us to risk other people just to benefit our own selves. I understand the fact that people are extremely anxious, they want to go outside, they want to meet other people. But perhaps by exposing ourselves, we might be putting those people at risk who are the most vulnerable. And I know the religions around the world, we have tremendous respect for the elderly in our community. And the elderly are usually the central focal point for communities. So protecting them is actually something that we should always try to do. And unfortunately, many people, especially from the elderly generation, are no longer with us. After listening to Felicia, 9 nurses passed away recently. I mean, that is damning news that even after the vaccination and after all the rules for isolations being kept in mind, people in the front line are still being affected. That is very, very worrying, but very sad news at the same time. So another element which this takes me to is there is one saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that the one who is not thankful to humans can never be thankful to God. So now where we have people in the front line like nurses and doctors and so on and so forth, who are actually physically in every way, they're being exposed to this virus. And as Felicia mentioned, people have also passed away. So number one, we should be thankful to them. We should pray for them. I mean, regardless of what faith one belongs to or no faith, it is absolutely crucial that we pray for them because they are sacrificing all they have for the sake of other human beings, for the sake of society. Secondly, if a doctor, a nurse is working around the clock, 12 hours a day, tremendous shifts, day and night, these nurses are not able to meet their children, doctors aren't able to meet their children due to the risks attached. And yet we can say, no, this is not real news, the vaccination is not real, this pandemic is not real, this was created, so on and so forth. So we undermine the sacrifices which are being given by people on the front line, which is very, very upsetting. It's very, very sad that people have to think this way, especially in this day and age. Just some research into the depth of this disease, this pandemic, will show that the sacrifices of these people is something which should be remembered for the rest of our lives. We should be eternally thankful to these people. Yet unfortunately, we're here trying to justify the pros of why we should be taking this vaccination. So in short, in summary, from a religious point of view, I'm extremely grateful, extremely thankful to everyone, even the some of my panelists, co-panelists who are here, who are still working, who are still on the front line. I mean, if we're not thankful to them, then our humanity comes into question, firstly. And secondly, the advice given by the government and by those around us who are experts in this field, we should follow the guidance to the letter. One example I can give as an imam is the mosques that we have, and I'm sure all the places of worship are the same. These are the safest public places that you can find, because every rule which has been given, all the rules given by the government are followed to the letter. So that's why I urge all people of faith or no faith that please follow all the guidelines which have been provided to you, and be thankful, be grateful to those who are providing this help to us, and always keep them in your very special prayers. So once again, I thank the association and the organizers for inviting me to this very important session, and I hope that after this session we can spread the word of the importance of taking this vaccination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Imam. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to rush up to call up the next speaker. Our next speaker is actually a trial recipient. Sisi Momo is a digital delivery lead, and she's the chairperson of Women in Tech in Manchester. She's the co-founder of Representation in Leadership. She's a mentor in the scheme Girls Who Are. This scheme helps to match disadvantaged ladies with mentors. She's got a BSc in microbiology and a master's degree in public health. And she has been part of the Novavax vaccine trial, which has recently been shown to be effective against the new strains of the corona found in South Africa and in the United Kingdom. She's just going to share her story as a trial recipient with us. Sisi, please take the stage. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Black Women in Health, for this opportunity to come and share my story, being part of the vaccine trial. First of all, I'd like to follow Sam and Felicia and pay homage to our frontline healthcare workers, our key workers, and our essential staff who have been on the front line of this right from the beginning. And also to say to my fellow panelists, thank you very much. I have enjoyed listening to every one of you, and I have picked a few things, learned a few things just sitting here listening to all of you. So thank you very much. I'm conscious of our time, so I'm just going to give a very brief overview of how I got involved in the Novavax vaccine trial. So the whole idea of taking part in a vaccine trial took root very early in the pandemic, because it was apparent very early on, say about March, April, that this was not going to go away without us getting a vaccine and some therapeutics as well. And during the course of this, in discussion with people in our community, the minority ethnic community, it came up, the question came up, if a vaccine came out, would you take it? And there was a lot of hesitance to take a vaccine. There were different viewpoints, and I said that I was going to take one. For me, it was a case of the benefits outweighing the risks. I mean, we've heard here, and we all saw the news. It disproportionately affected people of minority ethnic backgrounds. I live in a multi-generational household. My mother is a frontline healthcare worker. My cousin is a frontline healthcare worker. Hello, Cynthia. My friends are healthcare workers, frontline or key workers in the public sector. So for me, it was a case of the benefits outweighing the risk, and also the fact that the evidence is there that vaccines need to be tested in all populations. And we know from the evidence that historically, we don't get a lot of participants in the Black and ethnic minority community. So it was a no-brainer for me. Basically, I was like, I'm gonna register to get on a vaccine trial. It was quite straightforward. I basically went online. The National Institute of Health had a COVID vaccine registry, and I just put down my details, filled a short form, took about 5 minutes, sent it off, forgot about it. A few months later, I received an email and basically saying, would you want to take part in a trial? And I said, oh, yes, of course. And I put down my details. A clinician contacted me from the Novavax vaccine trial, and they basically went through what the trial was about and asked me a few pre-screening questions and booked me an appointment to come in to the center. I was part of the cohort in Manchester where I live. So I went in the first day. I completed an in-depth health questionnaire, had loads of questions. There was also a health check, so I got a health check as well. And then a clinician sat down to discuss with me the elements of what the trial will entail, and basically said, you know, we had an in-depth discussion, step-by-step guide of what will happen, and said, if you still want to sign up, then you can sign up for the trial, which I did. So the first thing was they set up an online diary. So I downloaded an app. Basically, I was swabbed for COVID. That was sent off to be tested, and then I was shown how to do a swab test. I was also given 3 swab tests to take home with me. If I have any symptoms or anything, I was to do a test and send it off to the lab for analysis, as well as complete an online diary if I had any symptoms or anything like that. I was also given access. I had the details of a clinician on the trial. I could ask a question at any point in time if I had any concerns. If I had any symptoms, I had somebody I could contact. So after all that was explained to me, I was given the first dose of the vaccine or placebo, because it's a 12-month-long trial, and it is randomized, so you don't know if you get a vaccine or if you get a placebo. So that was at the first meeting. And after that, I was observed for about 30 minutes. I didn't have any side effects. I'm sure, as some other speakers had mentioned, the only thing was a bit of a sore arm, and that was resolved within about 10, 15 minutes, and I was all right. I didn't have anything else. I went home and just continued with my day. That was that. I was given an appointment to come back in 3 weeks' time to get the second dose, which I did in December. I went in. That was a much quicker appointment. Discussed with a clinician. Have you had any symptoms since then? Have you got any concerns whatsoever? No, I was fortunate. I've not had any symptoms, no COVID, nothing. So I still have the test kits at home at the moment even. And then I got the second dose of the placebo or the vaccine again, and that was in December. And following on from that, next steps is to go back at the 3-month phase, which for me would be next month in March, where I'll go back and see them. In the meantime, as has been announced, Novavax have announced that the trial was, that the vaccine trial has been effective. So we're waiting for next steps, what will happen. And so for me, there have been no side effects to speak of, nothing. I've just got on with my life. I haven't had anything whatsoever. It's just been, it's been pretty straightforward from my point of view in terms of being on a trial. I've had a lot of confidence even in the Novavax trial team, because the organization was top notch. Everything was well handled. If you were given the support you needed, everything was well explained. And so I have a lot of confidence in that. And that's basically from a trial perspective and being a participant, my view and my take on what's happened for the Novavax trial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cici. Like I said this morning when I spoke to you, you are so brave. Thank you for being selfless to, be a trial recipient, because we really have a, very few amount of Black people that are trial recipients. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you everyone for being so patient. Our speakers have been so passionate about what they wanted to share with us. So we're going to quickly go into the myths that we've collected. These are the most common myths that we've collected from everyone. And so we're just going to go into this now. And our first question goes to Felicia. Felicia, please. Are you there?
Can you see me?
Yeah, I'm trying to find you now. Yeah, yeah. Are you on the first page? Yes, I can see you. Yeah, yeah. We can see you now. You're on the spotlight here. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so the first question is whether, if I can remember rightly, if you've had the,
I've already been diagnosed with COVID-19. So do I not need to receive the vaccine?
Yes, the answer is yes, you do need to receive the vaccine. The reason will be that your body may be already primed with antibodies, which the antibodies are a protein that either neutralizes a bacteria or a virus or an invading body, and it also generates an immune response to that, so it can kill off the offending agents. And so with COVID, when you've had COVID, we are unsure the length of duration of the antibodies that are in your system. So some trials have shown 4 months your antibodies might last after having COVID-19, or it may be up to 6 months. We're unsure. So just because you've had COVID-19 doesn't mean that you are immune to having a secondary infection in the future. So the advice is that you should take the COVID vaccine. The other thing also is to say that although we're still not sure that you should although we're still not sure about the length of duration of antibodies, the advice is that you should take the vaccine anyway.
Thank you very much, Felicia, for that very clear answer. Thank you. The next question goes to Dr. Adegoke. COVID-19 is not more dangerous than the flu. What do you say?
Thank you. I think that is a big myth and is actually unfair to COVID-19, because COVID-19 is much, much more dangerous than the flu. I have been a GP for coming to 22, 25 years now. And each year we deal with flu. The excess death rate that we see with COVID-19, we haven't seen anything near that. The worst year of flu that I remember was 2005, when we were using freezers to put body. But we haven't had, even that year, it was not near what we have had so far from COVID. COVID-19 is a dangerous disease, much more than flu. The problem is you don't know how it's going to affect your body. And that's why some people think it's a joke. If you see people that we see who have a terrible effect of the disease, then you will not equate it to flu. I have lost close families, friends, colleagues from from COVID-19. In all my years, I have not lost any of my patients that I know, just die simply from flu. So this is a dangerous disease.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adegoke. Our next question goes to Dr. Raliat. Researchers rushed the development of COVID-19 vaccine, so its effectiveness and safety cannot be trusted. What do you say?
So I did touch on this as part of my initial talk about how the development of the vaccine was done a lot quicker than normal because of the close collaboration across the country with lots of different research groups, and that research labs actually put all their other work to one side so they could focus on the COVID-19 vaccine. So it's not true that because it was rushed or because it was quick, that the effectiveness and safety can't be trusted. What I actually believe is that now that we've been able to see how quick it's possible to develop vaccines like this, because of the way that they've actually done the trials, that actually what we'll find is that in the future, more and more will we see that things like the vaccines and so on, especially in the time when you need things in the times of crisis, that actually the process being used now is what is going to be used in the future. I think it's important to say that whilst it was quicker than previously, actually no steps were missed, and nothing was done faster than actually it should have been done. It was quick because of the way that people, I think the way I heard somebody describe it was that so many labs and organizations just pivoted and they just faced this COVID-19 vaccine squarely and said, yeah, we're going to have to deal with this now because it's a global problem. And but actually what they didn't do was skip any steps or do anything that was too fast. Actually, it was really in effect of the fact that everybody just knew that they had to develop this very quickly because people were dying and something needs to be done. So it has no effect on the effectiveness or safety. And as I think I put in the chat, the safety is still being monitored and reviewed and reported on as part of phase 4 work.
Thank you very much for that very thorough answer, Dr. Raliat. Our next question goes to Dr. Adeko. I will just wait for everyone else to take the vaccine and there will be herd immunity. Dr. Adeko, what do you say about this?
I think it's a wrong way to handle this situation. You'll be making false assumptions if you want to actually wait for herd immunity. Remember, this vaccine protects the recipient, okay? It reduces the severity of the condition. It does not actually stop the virus going in, okay? So if somebody has not been vaccinated, the person is at risk themselves because they've not been protected, they haven't got any immunity of their own, okay? We are still waiting on data on its transmission, whether it's actually reducing transmission or actually stopping transmission. So I think not having the vaccine, waiting for herd immunity is a serious and a dangerous game to play. That's number one. Then think for a second, if everybody adopts this similar principle, then we're never going to achieve the. So my advice would be for you to protect yourself, like I said initially, be selfish, go and get the vaccine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeko. That was clear, that was straight. Our next question goes to Yayenta. COVID-19 vaccine includes a microchip and tracking device to monitor people. What do you say, Yayenta?
The answer simply is no, it's false. The COVID-19 vaccine does not include a microchip or tracking device to monitor people. And actually, if you think about it, there are so many different vaccines. There are different vaccines that have been licensed in the UK now. So we have the Pfizer, Biontic, we have Astrazeneca, we have Moderna, which has been authorized, but it's not being used in circulation at the moment. But we also have, we've heard Cici talk about the Novavax. We've had, and there are so many other vaccine candidates all around the world. So it would be even very difficult logistically to have a tracking device in all these different vaccines because they're just different companies. It's just not true. And also we've heard about how the different vaccines have slightly different ways in which they get the antigen or the antigen into the body. Okay, so for example, a Pfizer vaccine, you need to freeze it in really very cold freezing conditions, minus 70 to minus 80 degrees. It's just not possible to have a microchip that will be frozen in such frozen conditions and then defrosted and then given through a small needle as we do give a vaccine. you know, and that's just one of the vaccines, but there's so many other different vaccines. So when you think about it, logistically, it's just, it doesn't make sense. It can't be. It doesn't contain a microchip, and it doesn't contain a tracking device. Well, I've had mine now, so, you know, I'm still okay, I think.
Thank you, Yenta. Hopefully no one will be tracking you. And just to add to that, all vaccines go through thorough checks by the independent medical authorities. In the UK is the MHRA. They're the agency that check all medications before they are approved. Our next question goes to Imam Mohammed. COVID-19 vaccine contains haram ingredients. Yes?
Well, there's two ways to answer this. Firstly, number one, no, there are no harm ingredients. And the long answer is that let's say that the global health community and the scientists and the health professionals, they decide that this is the only way to save yourselves and those around you. Yet if somebody was to argue that this is not for me, this is not good for me, and he exposes other people to the risk, then how can that be halal? How can that be permissible? So him exposing other people is permissible in his eyes, but taking the vaccine is not permissible. So they should use common sense in that either way, number one, the ingredients are permissible, and secondly, the vaccine is of course permissible for the safety of the person and the community.
Thank you very much. I couldn't have said it better, so thank you for that. Our next question now goes to Felicia again. Sorry, our next question goes to Cici before we go back to Felicia. Cici, you've been a trial recipient. Does COVID-19 vaccine cause erratic behavior? Were you breakdancing after your vaccine? Or...
Oh, no. No is the short answer. And going back now, the only thing, like I said, and somebody else mentioned it on the panel, was a sore arm, and that was it. It took less than, it didn't even go up to 20 minutes. The other thing I want to say is 14 million people have taken the vaccine in the UK now. 14 million. My dad is one of them. I'm sure you can't hide erratic behavior if that's happening 14 million people.
Yeah. Thank you, Cici. That was really, really good one. Yeah, back to Felicia. Once I received the COVID-19 vaccine, I no longer need to wear a mask.
That's absolutely false. Everybody has to do all they can to make sure that we stay safe as a population. And it's essential that we wear masks, whether we've had the vaccine or not. We know that we've only had a fraction of the population that have been vaccinated. And so there will be many people that have not yet received the vaccine and will not take the vaccine. And we also know that there will be a percentage of the population that will not have immunity at all. So until we can safeguard the population in terms of either herd immunity or either a massive uptake of the vaccine, you still must do all what you can. So wearing masks is going to just be part of our daily life. And I just also want to bring your attention to that there is often people still out and about in society that won't wear their masks, will be spreading droplets. And note that we still have asymptomatic infection, which means that up to 40% of the population will have the virus and will show no symptoms. And so we'll be transmitting the viruses without knowing it and without you knowing it as well.
Thank you very much, Felicia. And just to follow up on that, Dr. Adegoke, wearing a mask is harmful to our health. It can trap carbon dioxide inside the mask. Is this true?
Capital no. I should have been dead if wearing mask is harmful, because for many years I work as a surgeon in the theater, and one of the regular things you wear is mask, and you wear mask for days. As a cardiologist, you wear mask. And since pandemic has started, I'm still seeing patients face to face. I'm not even wearing the ordinary type of mask that people wear. I wear something even much more than that. There isn't any evidence that it traps carbon dioxide inside the body. We have been wearing masks before COVID.
Yeah.
And we will still keep wearing masks before COVID because of the profession that we do. So it's not true.
Thank you very much for that very clear answer. Dr. Raliat, the COVID-19 vaccine has severe side effects such as allergic reaction. I think you talked about this before, but briefly.
Yes, so the COVID-19 vaccine does have side effects, but the vast majority of them aren't severe. And in actual fact, the allergic reactions are no more than would be expected with any vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine contains a component called PEG, which is known to cause allergic reactions, but it's also in other medicines. The rate of severe side effects with the COVID-19 vaccine is very, very minimal. What you should expect us to have are, I think as other people have described, the sore arm, maybe a little bit of chills, headaches, feeling a little bit feverish, which is a sign that your immune response is actually being activated by the vaccine. Other side effects which have been reported in the trials, the incidence of these is no more than background incidence in people without having the vaccine. So in actual fact, and I will go back to what the previous speaker said, COVID vaccine has been given to, in this country alone, nearly 15 million people, and they're very minimal side effects other than those expected.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Raliat. Dr. Adeko, doctors want to force people to take the vaccine. Is this true? Are you forcing your patients?
No, doctors are not forcing people to take the vaccine. What we are trying to do is to encourage them to take the vaccine. We offer vaccine as recommended by the government. Nobody's being forced. It's not mandatory. There's no passport or no certification. So doctors are not forcing anybody to take vaccine. We explain to them why the vaccine is important and offer the vaccine.
So you've heard from the doctor, you need to make your own decision. It's not mandatory. Back to Yeyenta first. COVID-19 vaccine will alter my DNA. Is this true?
No, it's not. The Pfizer vaccine is an mRNA vaccine, okay, and it's not the same as DNA. It can't combine with DNA to change it in any way, and that's just the Pfizer vaccine. But as I stated before, there are so many different types of vaccines and different ways in which they do send the messenger into the body. So it's just simply not true that COVID vaccines alters DNA. For the Pfizer vaccine specifically, it's a very fragile component in that vaccine that degrades and it destroys and becomes inactive within 3 days. So there is no way, there is nothing that the mRNA is so different from the DNA. It just doesn't combine.
Thank you very much, Yenta. Now we'll go to Imam Mohammed. Imam Mohammed, please. Our next question is for you. COVID-19 vaccine contains pork and other animal products, so I can't take it.
Well, the myths keep getting more interesting, I think. Firstly, the organizations or the vaccinations like Pfizer, Moderna, or Astrazeneca, they've all issued statements that there are no pork elements in these vaccinations. So that's the reality. There's no such thing which is considered haram, for example, in Islam, and all these companies have clearly issued statements. So that is the reality. And secondly, if there are some elements, and that's the only way of safeguarding one's safety and security and his well-being, then that is permissible for his own well-being and for the well-being of the society again. But in my opinion, in this day and age, almost everything, there's always a halal option for somebody not willing to take such a vaccination. But coming back to the main question, whether these vaccinations have pork elements, then they have issued statements that they do not have any pork elements.
Thank you very much, Imam, for that. Okay, so our next question goes to CC. COVID-19 vaccine is a scam. You've had the trial, or you've been a trial recipient, CC. COVID vaccine is a scam. I thought you'd be the best to answer this.
There's a pandemic ravaging the whole world, and the world is throwing resources at it, trying to come up with a vaccine. And hence you've had the different vaccines that have come up, with the two that have gone through the two that have gone through the regulatory process in the UK that are in that have been given out to people. It's not a scam. We need to get ahead of this, and this is the way to do it. So, and I've been on the Novavax trials, I've discussed, no, it's not a scam. It is a vaccine being given out to people.
Thank you very much, Sisi. We'll just go around one more time and then we'll go straight to the questions from the audience. So Felicia, this is just for you again. I think this is a quick one. If we can just answer this set really quickly. Can you get COVID-19 infection from the vaccine?
No, there is no evidence that there is live virus within any of the vaccines. I think that the question relates to the symptoms that people can experience as side effects of the vaccines, like fever, like soreness, like pain. And those are related to the vaccine doing its job, which is to stimulate the immune system to fight off any bacteria or any virus.
Thank you very much, Felicia. The next question goes to Dr. Adegoke. COVID vaccine is created by the Antichrist.
Thank you for that. I think sometimes people give credit to the devil and his agent more than he deserves. The concept of Antichrist is completely, totally misunderstood by so many people. I don't believe that creating COVID-19 or creating COVID-19 vaccine is one of the modalities by which Antichrist will act. And by the way, if you're a serious-minded Christian, you shouldn't be here to experience the work of the Antichrist. Your life should just be so good that when Christ comes, you are gone. And so why are you worried about Antichrist and vaccine to start with if you're serious-minded as Christians?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Adegoke. I love what you said about, being serious-minded as Christians. I'm just going to go straight to Dr. Raliat for the next one. We should just wait for herd immunity. I think this has been answered before, so I will just jump on to the next one, Dr. Raliat, if you don't mind. Okay. Dr. Adeko, COVID-19 deaths has been exaggerated.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. Yeah, the figures speak for itself. If you look at the back here, you can see this was December in the UK. The number of deaths based on certificate, 79,000, more than what it was in the previous December. And if you look at the Office of National Statistics, the excess death in the UK, there were more than 80,000 number of deaths more than the previous years. What is more interesting is if you look at the American experience, look at year after year, year after year with COVID, 2015, up to 2017, 18, 19, 20. Look at 2020. These are the number of excess deaths. And each time coincides with, this was the first wave, number of deaths there. Look at the spike there. And look at another one in the summer. And now, towards the end of the year, and we're in January. So the excess deaths are not being exaggerated. They are really, these are real figures and real facts that are being given to us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeko. That's so, the graph just shows it, it can't just be something made up. So we go straight to Yayenta. COVID-19 vaccine causes infertility in women.
Sorry about that. For this one, I'm going to just say what the Royal College of Obstetricians say. There is no evidence of the vaccine affecting fertility in women. Okay, women trying to have children anyway, there is, in every monthly cycle, there's a 30% chance of being pregnant. So, the odds are already high against, being able to conceive. Different things that affect fertility, such as stress levels, the time of the month, the time of intercourse, the quality of the husband's sperm, etc. But the vaccine in no way affects fertility. it's just not true. You know, you can still go on to have a viable pregnancy and healthy babies. I was in a seminar, I think during the week, where it was shown that 12 women who eventually got pregnant after having the Pfizer vaccine. So, you know, they had the vaccine as part of a trial recipient. 12 people out of that went on to get pregnant and went on to have healthy babies. So there is there's no evidence of the vaccine causing infertility in women.
Thank you very much, Yenta. And straight to Imam again, another question for you. I think it's quite related to what you've answered before. The vaccine contains alcohol, so I cannot take it.
Well, let's say the vaccine does contain alcohol, for argument's sake. Then we should look at the Quran. The Quran says that concerning wine, that there is forbidden, of course, but there are some advantages for people. So let's say that the advantage can be in the form of vaccination. And it's so little, I mean, the doctors can tell you better than anybody else that it's so little that it's not going to affect anyone or anything. So the advantage is there to be utilized for the benefit of mankind, and the Quran gives permission for that.
Thank you very much. And for CC, there were no Black COVID-19 vaccine trial recipients. I think you've debunked this myth.
Yes, well, me, and within my own circle, I know 2 other people that are Black minority ethnic group. So no, there were quite a few of us on the trials.
Thank you. Just because we're running out of time, we're just going to do the commonly asked questions quickly. We've taken all the questions that we got from the audience. So we're just going to ask a question. For Felicia, I think we've already talked about who should be vaccinated, but there's a question here that says, do you need to have the flu vaccine before the COVID vaccine? Are you able to answer this for us?
No.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another question for Dr. Adegoke. I'll combine it to a question we got from the audience. Can someone who has COVID-19 have the vaccine? Who has had COVID-19 have the vaccine?
Yeah, I think that was actually answered earlier. Yes, you can. You just need to wait for 28 days of having the diagnosis or having been tested positive. It's after 28 days that you can have your vaccine.
Okay. We got a question from the audience saying, are people being tested prior to the vaccination? How can you ensure that people that are not symptomatic don't get the vaccine?
Before you get your needle into the arm, we have some pre-screening questions, which will include whether you have any symptoms of COVID-19, whether you are unwell on the day of the vaccination, whether you have been tested positive within the last 28 days. Those are the questions, and we can only do that. It will not even be possible physically and feasible to do tests for everybody before they receive their vaccine. So you don't have to be tested before you receive vaccine. But if you have any symptoms, you'll be excluded.
Thank you very much. This goes to Dr. Raliat. You've already talked about how effective the vaccine is. So I'll just go to another question we have from the audience, which says, what would you say to those who are hesitant to get the vaccine due to concerns of long COVID side effects and fertility problems?
Okay, so the vaccine cannot give you COVID, and therefore you can't get long COVID from the vaccine. What I would say though is that if you don't get vaccinated, you are obviously at greater risk of actually getting COVID, and therefore from getting long COVID and the adverse effects of having COVID. So in actual fact, you should take the vaccine so that you don't get long COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask one more question, Dr. Raliat? Someone has asked here, can the vaccine trigger crisis in sickle cell patients?
There was no evidence of that from the trials. I cannot recall anything of that in the trials. What I would say though is that we do have a problem in that Black people don't volunteer for trials. And therefore, and so obviously we've got CC here and some people, and she obviously there are some people, but in terms of the greater population, then as we as a community, if we don't volunteer for the trials, then in actual fact it's very difficult to find out whether or not with some of these conditions which we see in our population, whether or not they affect us. So but at the moment there is no evidence that actually it would trigger it would trigger a sickle cell crisis.
Thank you very much, Dr. Valiat. Our next question goes to Dr. Adeeko. Do I have a choice which vaccine I take? So can people choose which one they want?
No, it's whatever they are offered. They choose. They don't have a choice as to which one. I mean, these vaccines are in limited supply. So, and they are, like we've heard before, these vaccines are equally effective, and so I don't see a reason why we can't take anyone. So the simple answer is no. You are offered a particular one that is available at the time.
Okay, I've just got two more questions for you because it's related to being a GP. Can you take the vaccine if you're on warfarin, digoxin, blood pressure medications, and medications for other chronic medical problems?
Yes, there's no contraindication to taking the vaccine from those medications. So
okay.
Yes, they can take the vaccine as well as the medication they are on for other chronic diseases.
And just to reiterate, someone asked again, is the vaccine mandatory? And because there's news saying lockdown will not be lifted until all adults have had the vaccine.
No, there is no compulsion now with the vaccine. It's not mandatory at the moment in the UK, and I don't think the government is actually planning to do that. So the answer again is no, it's not mandatory, but we actually recommending it whenever anybody is invited to go for the vaccine.
Thank you very much. Our next question goes to Yenta. What strategies can be put in place to reach the ethnic minorities with barriers such as language, accessibility, and multiple comorbidities?
Okay, I think in this case, it would be really good for public health, offices of public health, to work very closely with the CCGs and have ways of engaging with local communities. Okay, because people of ethnic minorities often cluster in their communities, and we're often quite religious. So whether it be through churches or through the mosque, it would be important to engage with different communities and through voluntary and faith organizations, and have just that kind of engagement where we're listening and being heard and listened to, and have that dialogue with your local council and local voluntary groups, you know, and in most places in the UK, the offices of public health, which are located within your local councils, have a way of having that engagement with communities. So and I know that NHS England and Improvement have identified equality and health and inequality assessments, and they've sent this out to different areas of the country, encouraging offices of public health to engage with people with, you know, there's a table of people with protected characteristics, and engaging with them to see how they can work with producing information in languages. So to talk about languages, for example, we can work with people to provide information in their local dialect, to write in written languages that are not English. But we also have to remember that not all languages are written languages. Some of these languages are oral and spoken languages. So engaging with local radio stations, for example, could be a good way to get the messages across. Engaging with people through, you know, the great work that Black Women in Health is doing is fantastic. It's one way of engaging with people of ethnic minorities, because you know, people may not necessarily watch the mainstream channels, you know, 1 to 5. People may watch other channels. So these are ways that we can work in engaging, you know, different communities as well. Yeah, I think those are the things that come to mind for now.
Thank you very much. I think Dr. Adegoke raised his hand to answer, to say something. Dr. Adegoke, if we come back to you.
Just one point that my PCN, we're actually looking into taking vaccination to the mosque. Wow. Because we have a large number of ethnic minority group that are Muslim where I serve. And so we decided that to reach them, and talking with the Imam of that mosque, we're looking at possibility of taking it there.
Okay. Dr. Adegoke, that's really amazing. Whilst you're there, I just want to ask a question. Someone asked, how easy is it for undocumented people to come forward for the vaccination, considering the traditional mistrust between health services and this group of people? How can they come forward?
Well, I mean, at the moment, if you belong to the cohort 1 to 4 that we're doing, nobody asks you whether you are documented or not. Generally speaking, as an LMC secretary, we don't believe that it's our job to be border agencies. We don't believe we are policemen for immigration. If you are unwell, and this is a public health problem, so if you need it, you will get it, and nobody's going to report you, or we don't even have the time to be doing that anyway. So if you qualify and in the category that are being done currently, you will get it done.
Thank you. I think that's a message that really needs to go out there. Thank you so much.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Just like Dr. Adegoke said, this is a public health problem. So it's really important that everybody gets vaccinated, whether you are documented or undocumented, because at the end of the day, an undocumented person can pass the virus to everybody. So it's in the interest of the government, it's in the interest of the public and the nation that everybody who is a living being is vaccinated. So please do not let that put you off, because truly nobody has the time to start policing you and going after you to check, details, or to go after your address, because this is now a matter of life and death. So it's important that everybody gets vaccinated. Just like Dr. Adegoke said, in Sheffield, where we are, we have also taken the vaccines to the mosques and to get people vaccinated. We're trying to also engage communities through speaking to people after church services. People meet on Zoom, but it's also all educational, just to improve the awareness and to listen to the fears of people and the concerns of people, like we are doing now. Somebody's asking on the chat, but do you not need an NHS number? No, you don't. I had my vaccine today. Nobody asked me for an NHS number. So I don't know if that has been experienced by other people, but I wasn't asked for an NHS number.
Thank you very much, Iyenta. And that's true, you don't need an NHS number. Okay, now we're going to Imam Mohammed. This is another question for you. As a Muslim, should I take the vaccine? I think you've answered this in many ways today, but just a final word about this again.
No, I think before being a Muslim, he's a human being. So as a human being, he should take the vaccination.
Thank you very much. I think that's really straightforward. Thank you. And then we go to CC. How many doses are required for the vaccine?
For the 2 vaccines that have been approved in the UK, 2 doses. It's the same for the Novavax vaccine that is still going through the regulatory process.
Okay, because you're a trial recipient, I'll ask you this question. Someone asked, some people have been lucky enough to have received their 2nd dose. Can they relax social distancing?
No, there's a pandemic and we've got to protect other people, don't we? So no, not until we've got enough people vaccinated and the evidence is in that it's stopping transmission or is at least reducing it. So no, the answer is no.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the audience, I have 2 questions for Dr. Adegoke. This is somehow related. Dr. Adegoke, having the vaccine does not mean you can ignore social distancing, lockdown rules. How can you ensure that we're able to get close to those outside our house?
Yeah, I mean, having the vaccination, like just said by Sisi now, doesn't mean you can relax the social rules or the restrictions. we can still reach out to people outside our environment or outside our immediate environment by using the platform we've been using through Zoom, making sure we are maintaining the social distancing and all that. So the answer is very simple. Because if you have the vaccine, doesn't stop you, doesn't actually enable you to start breaking the rules. You still have to maintain the social distances and the restriction.
Thank you very much. There was one question here. I'll answer it because I'm a GP and I'm passionate about this type of questions. Will all GP surgeries resume face-to-face appointments? Dentists complete more invasive procedures and they have reopened. Please, GP is open. We've been open throughout the pandemic. Since March last year, I have been seeing patients physically. And I can tell you categorically that all my colleagues have been seeing patients as well. GP is open. Go to your GP surgery, fill the forms online, complete, do a telephone consultation. However, if you go to your GP surgery physically, the door will be closed because they need to take extra protection, extra measures before just anyone is allowed into the practice. That's why we are doing telephone triaging first or completing the e-consultation form. And then if we think that you need to be seen physically for an examination, we will see you. We are your doctors. We love you. We will do no harm. We're here to protect you and we're definitely open. Okay, so we're going to the audience. I've got Temi Adeyemi. You've been raising your hand for a while. So please ask your question, Temi. Temi Adeyemi. Okay, maybe it's an error. We'll go to Tokwe Olamusu, and then Yeyenta after that.
Okay, all right. I did ask a question before. My question is, I heard on the panel that there are three types. There's the Oxford Astrazeneca, and there's Pfizer, and there's a third one. My question is, out of the three, which one is the most effective one? Which one is powerful?
Okay, I'll let the pharmacist answer that. Dr. Raliat here.
Shall I start?
Yes.
I think there's a misconception here that one is more or less powerful as such than the other. The reason why we need a lot is because there are a lot of people that need to be vaccinated, and some vaccines won't be suitable for some people. For example, if you are if you're allergic to a component. So rather than thinking about which one is more powerful, what we need to think about is actually, is there a reason why you wouldn't have one over than the other? Because there's actually no real world difference that we know of currently in the efficacy. So it's not a question of which one is more powerful. It's actually, in some cases, if you're allergic to PEG, for example, don't take Pfizer. For one of them is licensed for under 18, from 60 under 60 for 16 and over. Another is licensed only for 18 and over. So there'll be some reasons why you can't have one than the other, but there is no real difference in the efficacy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raliat. Yeyenta, Tokwe, I hope that answered your question very well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeyenta, you wanted to say something, yeah?
Yeah, I think also just to add to that about the being powerful about vaccines is that, just that, as Raliat has said, I think it's good to think about vaccines as substances which help to teach our bodies to fight a foreign agent. Okay, so what happens then is that if your body can recognize that foreign agent when it sees it, then you're winning. And that whether you have whichever one of the vaccines that you have, that is what it's doing. So there's no one that is more powerful as such than the other. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. But I was going to answer the question really about, somebody asked about pregnancy and whether you can have the vaccine if you're pregnant. So I just wanted to answer that. That JCVI actually asked that it advises that people who are pregnant should be considered for a vaccine if they are at risk of exposure. So like if you're a nurse and you're pregnant and you're working on the wards, you can be considered for the vaccination, and especially if your risk to having COVID or contracting COVID infection is high and cannot be avoided, or where the woman has underlying conditions that put them at very high risk of serious complications from COVID. However, we're not advocating for the vaccine to be used routinely in pregnancy. And the reason for that is not because the vaccine is dangerous, it's just because, like with all other medicines, we do not try out medicines in clinical trials on pregnant people. Okay, just for the ethical protection of those people, we just don't. But they have made a concession for people who might be at high risk of serious disease or high risk of contracting COVID if they're pregnant to be able to get the vaccine, because pregnant women have a reduced immune system and they're much more likely to have severe illness if they're ill from COVID, and much more likely to end up in ITU. So it's important that you have a risk assessment and discuss this with a health professional who knows you, who knows your background, your healthcare history, your medical history, and then they can help you make that decision and discussing the risks and benefits with you.
Thank you very much, Yayanta. We have a question for Cici here. We're just going to take 4 more questions and we wrap it up. Cici, have you found out whether you had the vaccine or placebo? If so, when did you find out?
No, is the short answer. It's meant to be a 12-month trial. But what Novavax have done now is to also incorporate a cross-trial. So basically, if you had the vaccine in the first round, you will get the placebo in this second round. And if you've had the placebo in the first round, you're going to get the vaccine in the second round. But you're not going to know which is which for now. So the short answer is no.
Thank you very much. I'll throw this next question to Dr. Adeko. It's in 2 folds. Does the vaccine confer lifetime protection, or are you required to get annual vaccinations like the flu vaccine?
The answer is we don't know at the moment, but it's likely that we need to have booster doses in future. That's why it is. But I don't think it does confer lifelong immunity at the moment. The way things are now, I mean, it's not been tried enough, and we haven't got enough data. The chances are that we need booster doses in future.
Thank you very much. And this question, I'm going to throw it to Dr. Raliat again. Dr. Raliat, I'm not picking on you, but I think this question is for you. I have a rare neuroleptic malignant syndrome, and I've suffered in the past a severe allergic reaction to a pharmaceutical product, hence my reluctance to accept the vaccine, which is very understandable. I beat the pharmaceutical company's own acknowledged side effects odds. How can I be sure that this rushed product will not affect me again? Once bitten, twice shy.
I think that's a good point. And I did put something about allergies in the chat and side effects. I think you need to look at it from 2 points of view. There are known local, some of those side effects such as chills, headaches, fatigue, etc. are also symptoms of your underlying condition. Then you do need to be careful. I think the fact of it being rushed, I think, is not a factor here. I think, as I've explained. However, there is now a pathway if people are allergic to other drugs, or as a general rule, then you can still take the vaccine, but depending on what you've previously been allergic to, we might say, for example, go and have the vaccine in hospital, so that there are full facilities in case something happens to you. Or much more likely, you have to be observed for example, 30 minutes after having the vaccine to make sure you don't have a reaction. So the answer here really is that actually, if you have previous reactions to other drugs, then really you need to speak to your doctor, because it's the history of that reaction that needs to inform what do you do in terms of taking this COVID vaccine. But very, very little, very, very few are actually contraindicated. It just might mean that we have to have other precautions in place.
Thank you very much for that. I think we've got just 2 more questions to go. One of the questions we got was just about the new strain. I think Dr. Raliat, you might be the one again, I'm sorry. But the new strain, are the current vaccines that we have effective against the new strain?
Okay, so first of all, there are lots of strains. And that's to be expected, as all the viruses, especially these SARS viruses, they do mutate. So there are lots of strains. The information about which vaccines are effective against which strains is changing all of the time. So for example, the South African variant, then there's now some evidence coming out that the Pfizer vaccine is still very active against it. But possibly, very possibly, the Astrazeneca one may not be. However, that evidence is in only a handful of people, so we're still waiting for that information. There's definitely evidence which says that even if they in some cases, the vaccines may have reduced efficacy to the strains, but they will still have some amount of efficacy. And what the manufacturers are doing now is that they're very quickly looking at their vaccines and testing them, and in some cases now re-engineering to make them active against the strains. And that's what goes back to the fact that actually probably there's the chance that we'll have to be vaccinated every year or so, which everybody should need to remember. That's what we do with the flu vaccine.
Yeah.
Every year it changes because the vaccine mutates and has a variant.
Thank you very much. Very well explained. And I'll send the last question to Cici. Do you think the amount of minorities included in the trial influences the likelihood of minorities wanting to receive the vaccine?
The short answer, I think yes. Definitely it has an impact in my community, in my immediate community. I mean, I documented my story on Facebook, and I got a lot of response from not just the community here, all over the world. So yes, I think it's definitely getting our stories out there definitely helps to increase that visibility and gets people, thinking about making an informed choice regarding vaccines.
Thank you very much. That being said, Cici, can you say, what would you say to anyone out there who's thinking about, should I have it, should I not? What was your final word to the audience today?
Well, I understand the hesitancy, but I would say, please weigh the evidence. You've listened to the panelists today. Get your evidence from trusted sources and just weigh the evidence. And I really want to say, please take the vaccine, because it's not just about protecting yourself, you're protecting your family. Think about your loved ones, think about your colleagues. You want to go out, you want to mix up with people, you want to resume your life. Well, this is the way it's going to be. We need to get the vaccine uptake right up there. So please, please, please consider taking the vaccine.
Thank you so much. And now to Imam Mohammed Kusid, is there any final words you want to say to people out there?
So my final word would be follow the law, listen to the health professionals, and don't be selfish. Don't think about yourself. Think about the greater public, the community, and think about those people who have already given up their lives for, serving us. So we should keep them in our special prayers.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to move on now to Yayenta. Do you have any final words to everyone out there today?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, in terms of public health and to protect us all, vaccines are a way out of this. Okay, and the reason why we need to take the vaccine is because, one, COVID is real. And number two, COVID is here to stay. It's not going to go away. We can't wish it away. It's here now. Now, if you think about in the past, in the 1950s, we had the polio epidemic. Okay, and that's been very well controlled through vaccinations. However, there are about only 2 countries or 3 in the world which still have small cases of polio. But why is that? That's because they haven't covered totally all their populations for to be able to get that herd immunity. So even though some of us in this country would have forgotten about polio, we don't talk about it. We don't see people with polio. We don't hear about diphtheria, for example. That was another epidemic that happened around the 1920s. There were outbreaks of diphtheria, which is caused by a bacteria. And again, what happened? Vaccines helped to eliminate this disease. We've heard about the Russian flu, which all the way in 1890 was devastatingly killing people all around the world. And there was the 1918 Russian Spanish flu as well. What happened with these flu viruses was that we had a whole vaccination program, and now we now also the Russian flu, which was very virulent at the time, killed lots of people. It's beginning to emerge in the scientific world that is what we now know as the common cold. So COVID is here to stay. Eventually, after very many years, it might actually become common in the sense that because it would have changed and mutated so much along the line, it then gets less causing such severe disease. Hopefully it will get milder over time. That's what I'm trying to say. But the only way to be able to get to that hopeful point is to be able to engage in the vaccination program. And to be able to get that, we can have all the vaccines in the world that we have, and we can have all the resources and the people who are there to offer the vaccines. But if we do not present ourselves to get the vaccines, I'm afraid we'll still have COVID, and we will still have it mutating, and sometimes to a more severe strain. So my plea is to consider the facts that we have given you today. I'm not pushing you to say take it or not, but whatever decision you make it based on the truth. And we are not here to push under the carpet the histories that have gone in the past about vaccines and ethical issues. But here and now, we have a problem in our hands, which is we do not have the time. There is a severe death rate, and we need to bring it under control. And for your sake and the sake of your loved ones, please do take the vaccine. Because
thank you very much. We are running out of time, so I'm just going to go straight to Dr. Adeko. Have you got any final words, please?
Yeah, what I want to say is I will need to give everybody, please verify before you amplify any of these messages. Okay, make sure whatever you are saying is really true. That's why we're taking time to discuss about the myths and to try and give the ones that are not true. Let me give you an example, and that's one that I want you to take with. There was one.
Please, can you come a bit closer so we can hear you better? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what I said is, please verify before you amplify any of this information at all. If the government, the COVID infection is out to actually kill, or government want to invent it to wipe away the black race or to control us, they didn't have to invent a new one. Already,
thank you. Bye.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, there are already vaccines available that can be used and that can be targeted towards the black race. For instance, BCG is there. If they wanted to actually get at black people or the BAME, they could have used BCG for an example to get at us, but they are not doing that. So it's not about it. Why would they invent a disease that will almost kill a prime minister, that took American president to hospital, that actually caused recession in virtually all the big economies in the world? They won't do it. So please, no, COVID is real, and we need to take this vaccine. Think about it. I think on the balance of probability, taking this is much better than contracting COVID infection.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeko. And Dr. Raliat, please, just a word for our audience before we wrap up.
Okay, thank you. So my final word is that I think over the past few months, we've heard so much about the fact that people of Black and minority ethnic populations we're dying from COVID, yet we're refusing the vaccine. And my plea really is, don't let that be our narrative. there is so much information out there that people that we've told people today, and that people can find. What we don't want is for this to be the definition of us. So our narrative really should be that we hear the information, we listen to it, we verify the information, we listen to the evidence, we trust, we listen to people that we trust, and we don't fall into that trap of that double whammy. We're dying disproportionately of COVID, and we're also disproportionately refusing the vaccine. That's not us, and we should not let that be us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all our speakers today. Felicia Obi, who is gone, Dr. Adeko, Dr. Adegoke, Yayenta, Dr. Raliat, Sisi, and Imam Mohammed Khorshid. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your, sharing your knowledge and sharing your expertise today. You've heard it from the experts. I'm a GP myself, and I work on the front line. I've taken the COVID-19 vaccine, and I would encourage everyone that if you have the opportunity to do this, please do it for yourself. Like Dr. Adeko has said, be selfish, go for it. Do it for your family, do it for your friends, do it for your community. Together, we can be stronger. We can only win this war against COVID-19 if we stick together. And the only way we can stick together is if we follow the right information and take the opportunity we have. It's better to take the vaccine for me than to catch COVID-19. I don't know about you. The whole economy has been devastated since last year, and our life as we knew it has changed. The decision is yours today. When we started this event today, I told you we had 4 A's: to acknowledge the problem, acknowledge why you are reluctant, acknowledge why you are hesitating to take the vaccine. And number 2 is to address it. When you understand why, it's okay to be curious, it's okay to be concerned, it's okay to want to know more, but address it. And you can only address it by getting the answers from verified, reputable sources. Get your answers, which is number 3, from the right source. Make sure you are not, just listening to anyone who is not an expert or who does not have the reliable information. And the 4th A is about you. Action from you. Act on the information you've got. And then hopefully we'll see you next year. We'll all be here celebrating after we've won this fight, but we have to do it together. We have to do it together, and it all lies in our hands. So I want to thank every single one who has been here today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. I want to especially thank our moderators who were looking in the comment section, picking out the questions, Dr. Cynthia Momo Amadi and Dr. Ayede Ologun. Thank you so much. Thank you, BWIH Women, for helping us publicize this event and inviting your families. Please share the news with your family, share the information with them, because I think the more we spread the right information, the less the misinformation will be spread, or the less the misinformation will hold water. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the evening. I'm going to wrap it up here. The conversation continues on our Twitter page and on other social media handles. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening and make the right decision. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Is there a rebroadcast of this?
Yes, sorry. There's going to be videos on YouTube. We'll share the link and we'll send it through the registration portal you use on Eventbrite. We'll share it all over. It's being recorded. Thank you. We'll share it. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a lovely evening.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.